Hello, good morning, and welcome to our webinar, the Risk and Compliance Management Program. Some fundamentals about that. I would like to welcome you all to our webinar out of the series of Mastering Compliance Governance in Anti-Financial Crime. As always, I'm not alone in this web meeting. I have Khan with me. She will take over some parts of today's agenda. Besides that, I would first like to give you a short introduction about MSG. MSG is a group of companies with more than 10,000 consultants in 33 countries worldwide. So revenue in year-end 2022 was about 1.3 billion. You see some of the countries we are in, and obviously we have also customers worldwide. We, so Khan and me, are part of the anti-financial crime compliance experts of MSG Group. So everything about preventing financial crime, investigations on financial crime are part of our daily business. That means AML, KYC, fraud, anti-bribery and corruption. Those topics are all part of our day-to-day business. From the logistics, I would like to give you just some short informations. You've been able to communicate with us and send us your questions by using the chat functionality of this meeting. We will try in our Q&A session at the end to answer all of your questions. In case we would not be able, because we are running out of time, feel free to send us your questions via email at info@msg-compliance.com, where you will get these kind of informations also through our chat. We would also highly invite you, would be appreciated if you take part in our polls. We have, I'm not sure, 3 to 4 questions prepared for you during today's webinar. And we would really appreciate if you can participate. You can participate by using the QR code shown here, or by using the URL www.menti.com. We will also provide you a direct link in our chat when we come to those questions. Well, that's it. I guess we can start with the agenda for today's webinar. As always, in our webinars, we segmented it into 4 parts. The first one, I would like to give you an overview about the components of a risk compliance management program, before I then try to show you on how you can connect those components. Based on the idea on how to connect those components, you will be able to follow up on Khan's introduction on how to digitize this program, with the challenges and opportunities coming with this digitalization. And then Khan will provide you some ideas in form of use cases, how that could look like. As mentioned, we have roughly about 30-35 minutes, so that we have some time left for answering your questions. And we would also like to invite you upfront to our whole webinar series and the other webinars following, either on the risk assessment side or on the governance side. So let's start with the first topic on the agenda, which is the components of a risk and compliance management program. So typically, we all aim to get a robust component. Why do we aim for that one? Because there are many regulations out there where you can find at least ideas on how to structure your program. Whether it's the Banking Secrecy Act in the US, whether it's the MA risk in Germany, or whether it's, as shown here, the FICA in South Africa. But there are also some standards like ISO norms where it's defined on how to provide such a risk and compliance management program. So whether you have those 8 components, whether you count yourself to 6 components or 9 or 10, doesn't matter. The key topics is that at least you should have those topics in mind that we showed here on the slide. They are more or less self-explaining, more or less. So let me just bring to your mind that compliance monitoring and testing does not mean, for example, AML monitoring systems. Monitoring and screening systems that you might use are part of the technology component here, whereas compliance and monitoring and testing means to monitor, to test your controls that you have as part of your overall program. So whether it's self-assessment, whether it's streamlining, even here you can have an opportunity to raise efficiency up to 30% without leaving some effectiveness on the table. So there, that's the overall component, and the idea of the regulators is to provide a resilient risk and compliance management program. So I also gave you some ideas or at least definition about what is robustness and what means resilience. And it's quite easy to understand that without having a robust program, you will not be able to provide resilience to your regulators. And I guess we are coming to the first question now. So if you can just move over to Menti and just give us your votings here. I guess Khan will also provide you with the results.
Yes, thank you, Dirk. I will switch to the Mentimeter presentation. You can start answering the first question now. Please do so. This is a ranking question, more or less. So, and we would like to ask you to name your top 3 RCMP components that, in your opinion, is most time consuming in your organization. And then we can see live results in an instant. So the first responses are flying in, and I would like to give you some more seconds so that we have more responses.
So it's not really surprising. An interesting topic is that the technology is not named at all. No, okay, so it's starting at the moment. I guess it's already a clear picture, isn't it? It's oh no, it's still changing between the first 3 topics.
So since this is the first question, maybe some of you still join the poll. So maybe 10 more seconds we would like to wait. But we kind of have our top 3. At least there's a trend towards this.
So regulatory interaction coordination is also covering regulatory change, so the ever-changing regulation. And then you have to worry about your risk assessment, your policies and procedures and controls, and for sure the compliance monitoring and testing. Yeah, great. Thank you for that one. I guess there's a second question following this one that we have.
Yes. So the next one is also referring. Yeah, Dirk, please go ahead.
No, so after you defined what is the most time-consuming ones, maybe you will also provide us with your ideas about what are the most risky ones in terms of audit-related risk or regulatory-related risk. So time-consuming was the first question. Now it's about what is the most risky topic, or what are the most risky topics? It's nearly the same thing. So obviously the auditors like to focus on the risk assessments and whether or not you follow the risk-based approach.
But if I
And
remember,
number one is policy and procedure.
I think what I recognize is that at least for the top three, we have time consuming, but also the highest risk, which makes sense to me that we spend more time on those risky areas. But for regulatory interaction, it was quite on a low range for the first question, but the risk is quite high. So it's a gap there. We might spend more time on that topic, maybe.
Yep.
All right.
It's also a clear result. Thank you all. So let's move back to the question on how we can combine those components.
Yes. So you can take over, Dirk. Thank you. That is the agenda.
Yep. Cool. So number two, agenda topic number 2 is how to connect the dots or to connect the components. Let's start with some food for thoughts here. So of course you have a regulation. Based on the regulation, you have a policy. The policy is about why do we take care about those topics, and then following to the policy, you have procedures, one or many procedures, where you define what's your standard and how to handle those topics and following these policies. And typically, whereas a procedure is a quality-based description of your standard and how to deal with it, and is defining the what and how, the controls and the control matrices are the quantitative correspondent to the qualitative procedure. So that means you have an external impact that is related to a control object, which is typically part of your policy. And then you define your standard, which is defined within the procedure. Now we look on the risk side of the game. And you can see that based on the control object, you typically start your risk analysis about it. And your risk analysis is all about your risk objects, which is an assessment object shown here, and the risk factors, so that you can define your risk. And then you define also your mitigations. And the mitigations have to prove whether they are effective or not. So that the whole effectiveness is given. And here you have the link also to the technology part of the overall program, because typically your mitigations and the effectiveness of your mitigations comes out of the statistics of your monitoring systems and your screening systems, and all these technology parts you have up and running in your compliance program. On the other side, a mitigation and those risk topics are directly or can be directly linked to your controls, where you also have these effectiveness game, because you think that as more controls you have, as more effective you are, which is not true. In most of the cases, you have, let's say, a maximum effectiveness that you can reach, and everything you do on top is just costing you money, so it's inefficient, and sometimes it's also distracting you from being effective. So self-assessment and streamlining is about part of the monitoring and testing area that we mentioned. And if we think about that, we will spend, the financial industry is about spending $365 billion this year on the compliance management programs, as per estimations by various analysts. Saving up some of the money is crucial. But it's not only about saving the money, which is covered by the effectiveness and efficiency benefit that you can gain by bringing those components together and linking them together. It's also about getting transparency about your task. So who is doing what? Am I on the right timeline? Will I reach completeness for this procedure by the time I require it? Will I be able to cover these regulatory impact or this update, this new regulation in time within the company, but also to gain the transparency about whether or not I'm able to understand my overall risk landscape within the group of companies. If I'm the group compliance officer, I know that I have sometimes different regulations within my entire group. Some are easy to harmonize, some are contradictory, but nevertheless, I have to provide a consistent approach to my lead regulator. That's covered by the transparency and task control. And the most important one from my perspective is to have an easy idea whether or not I have a gap, a regulatory gap, a risk gap, a gap in my risk assessment, gap in my mitigations, in my controls. That's hardly to be done when you do everything manual. But if you bring together the dots, if you're connecting the dots and digitize the system, it's much easier to understand whether or not you have a gap here that you need to fill in. And if we connect the dots, I would like to hand over to Khan, giving you an idea on how to digitize the risk and compliance management program.
Thank you, Dirk. Yes, so what I would like to cover is when digitizing the RCMP, we are not only focused on specific topics or area and handle those in an isolated way. So we need to consider internal and external aspects when developing our digitalization strategy. So we need to consider data that exists in the organization, existing technologies that are in place already, of course, also all the processes. But relevant aspects of the business environment, such as financial products that you are offering, and also the regions where you're operating, are also vital when you consider the digitalization transformation. So, of course, we need to deal with challenges that come with such a goal, because we want to have an integrated system. We want to get the best and the most of the benefits out of it. And you have different data sources that need to be governed, and you need to ensure and maintain the data quality in order really to get benefit out of them. So we have to, so the challenges are more or less obvious, but of course we need to take the opportunities into consideration, that it's worth investing in such a transformation. So you see, the first part here is reducing costs, but at the end, it's not our main goal, but it's more about the path where we get to it. So here are some examples of increasing the quality of your processes, your systems, IT systems, that reduce errors and also manual effort that you need if you have poor quality. You need to spend a lot of time to correct things or to adapt a process, a system based on a regulatory change. So by increasing the quality, you at the end also reduce the cost. And the same aspect is with the productivity, compliance, at the end compliance quality, so that you can achieve the cost reduction at the end. So having these integrated perspective of different internal and external aspects, as I mentioned in the morning before, you can create your own DNA and really build a resistant and robust and resilient system that Dirk mentioned before, so that it's easy and flexible enough to adjust your system based on regulatory changes. What we would like to show here is a business architecture of an integrated risk and compliance management system. So you see a centralized platform that integrate and combine different modules and help you to have different aspects in a centralized platform, but also to integrate data from other external systems, and at the end to integrate and combine all the different aspects that are relevant in order to have an effective risk and compliance management program. So as an example, if you start with the regulatory interaction or legal change management, you want to keep up with all the changes in the regulatory area, and we have here advanced technology that we can use in order to improve that process, so that you do not need to have that much manual effort to observe all the changes and to manage how to implement these new changes in your organization. So at that first step, you identified a new regulatory, and then you need to be able to transfer it and identify the gap in your organization. Do you need a new policy? Do you need to update an existing policy? And having such an integrated system, you don't need to switch between processes and systems. So everything is centralized, and you can all the data and information on that platform is consistent. So there is a data governance component, for example, that ensure information are consistent throughout the system and flow between different modules. So setting up like a new policy, for example, after you have identified a new regulatory change requirement, you can also then adapt this information in your risk assessment process and update this an API and are governed through the data governance component, as I said. So at the end, such an integrated system is vital to ensure data efficiency, data consistency, and to have an integrated platform to increase effectiveness in your compliance management system. So what we would like to focus on today is these two components, the regulatory interchange, legal change management, and also policies and procedures management. So we would like to showcase via two practical use cases how this can be done in an integrated environment. We also have another webinar service series for risk assessments already. You might have heard of it and also maybe also attended in such a webinar, and more will follow for other topics as well. So before we go to the practical use cases, I would like to switch back to our poll in Mentimeter. So I would like to invite you to go back to the Mentimeter, and I will also start sharing and present you the next question. So based on your professional experience, please rank the following problems according to their criticality for your compliance organization. So please rank all the 5 answer options that are most critical to you. So we have the first instance. So it's quite an equal distribution until now.
Yeah, I think it's especially we obviously took the right 5 topics based on our experience. So obviously the experience that we have here then the participants is corresponding to ours from our projects. Cool.
Yeah, so yeah, I think that's also interesting. So risk assessment has been mentioned quite a lot. Time consuming, critical. As I would like to invite you to attend some of our webinars about this topic. But today, let's have a look at the regulatory management and policy and procedures. So there is one last question for today that is where you can write down your answers based on your professional experience. What other urgent issues related to RCMPs do you see? So next to the one that you just read, are there any other that you see critical in the moment and that you need to urgently handle? So you can type in up to 3 responses, but yeah, feel free to share your thoughts with us. We would give you some more seconds to do so. Oh yeah. I think we have some typical governance topics here, such as upcoming regulations, change of regulatory environments.
I like the one
delegation.
hard-headed regulators. I like that one.
Yeah, contradictory regulations,
yes,
also mentioned. Yeah. So very interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And some topics you will definitely benefit when connecting the dots. Yeah. Cool.
Thank you very much. So let's head back to our presentation, to our last topic. So now what we would like to do is to present you with a practical use case related to analyzing new regulatory requirements, and then how to create and distribute a policy that you have created based on that new regulatory requirement. So first, I would like to get back to Dirk. that he can provide you some insight on what possibilities there are to analyze new regulatory requirements.
Yeah, so let's assume that by a web crawler or by a manual load, you got awareness about this Artificial Intelligence Act that the European Union is coming up with. And let's assume that based on your technology, you have components either for screening systems or for monitoring systems or for whatever you're using AI or machine learning in this technology. So based on the knowledge about that one and referring back to how to connect the dots, the system would make you aware at least that here's a regulation you should take care of, about, because you're using AI and maybe this AI regulation might be from interest of you. So what we can see here is our AI document manager. It's using a large language model to really handle those documents. It's a little bit like ChatGPT, but without all those negative effects that you have when providing tons of documents and comments out of the internet that are non-curated content. So the ChatGPT is much more hallucinating than our system can do. Nevertheless, it's about a large language model. It's about how to understand these kinds of regulations. So we see that there's one document in it. We have similarity analysis. We can provide abstract to this documentation or to this regulation. So we typically train the model in regards to regulatory texts, draft regulations, to guidelines, to consultations, to cases. So all law enforcement cases and so on that when public will be covered here as well. And of course, you can chat with this system and use it as an expert partner for a discussion about the content. And so you can write down your questions. Obviously, he can provide you the right answers, and one answer could be this one. If we look on this AI regulation, it might come up with a sort of this kind of information that now needs action on your side, whether or not you have to cover those risks, whether you have to change a risk assessment, whether you need to do something on your policy and procedure management. So let's assume everything is connected. It can directly tell you what kind of your program is affected by this regulation, and where you need to do what kind of activities and tasks to comply with it. And I'm sure that one part of this will be shown by Khan in a moment.
Yes, thank you. So what you've seen is a potential chat history about this specific document here. And you might be aware of the AI Act of the EU. And we have, by answering, questioning certain questions, we get more insight on the content. And at the end, we have asked about the obligations that are related to the different risk levels of AI systems. So that is also the content of this act, to have a risk-based approach when dealing or using such AI systems. And now we would like to take that response and simulate a use case in reality. And now you have identified that you are affected by this act and need to update your policy management on that. And now I would like to switch to a system that can be used in order to manage and orchestrate all the policies, group policies in your organization in an efficient and effective manner. So let's start with that example. So we have here Jonathan, who is the group compliance officer and now wants to create a new policy for that new EU AI Act. So here we can enter basic meta information about that policy so that it can be found within your organization that fits in your policy structure. And based on, for example, how you need to implement the new act, you can provide priority as well as the due date when you want to implement this new policy in your entire organization, and also the review cycle. So when did you want to review this policy so that you can keep it up to date? So next to the meta information that you want to store here, you can also provide a link to a physical document so that you can still keep your document management system where you have all your policies in place, such as SharePoint or other DMS. Now, coming to the content of the policy or of the regulation itself, you can provide information on, for example, is it applicable to specific regions? Here we have EU. Is it applicable to specific products in your organization? And here is just an example. If you know these two product categories are affected by AI, you need to select these two so that the system can identify which entities in your group needs to implement this new regulation. So on that step, you can create a new procedure for that policy, so which is more on an operational level. And you can standardize and digitize the content of such an act. And this is an example that we created. It's just very simple one that might not be, it would be more comprehensive in real life. But just to show you, out of the response from the AI document manager, there are different risk levels or AI applications with high risk up to unacceptable risk. And here, by having this control matrix, you can define the exact rules for each risk category. So from prohibition up to different.
And let's assume you have the system already knowing your risk appetite. It would be able to provide you with a recommendation on how to fill in the control matrix. That would be then the next level of the integration.
Thank you. So another very important, maybe time-consuming aspect that you might face in reality is how to ensure that those new regulations are communicated throughout your company. And by having such a system, you will be able to distribute them to the local entities, to the local branches of your organization within workflow-based feature. So you don't need to take care of audit trail, you don't need to take care of history management. Everything is documented automatically. And here is a local compliance officer who has logged into the system and see this new group policy that needs to be locally reviewed. And he or she could either accept the group policy or has the opportunity to adjust based on local requirements or other requirements that can be explained here. So, and you can keep this issue of contradictory regulations with this tool and in a very efficient way, because you can track all the changes and you see the rationale to all these changes. And if a regulator needs to know, this is you just need to show this workflow to a regulator without getting all the different information from various systems. So after this local change of the local entity, this change needs to be approved by the group compliance officer again. And Jonathan, in our case, will get a task in his list so that he knows, okay, I need to approve a local change to my new AI Act. So, so when accessing this information, I go to this local version of the policy, can read the exact change and the rationale to this local change, and I can approve it. So everything is historized, and you are always able to demonstrate this change and the entire flow to an external regulator. So the system also helps you to keep track and know there are another local entity that needs to review this locally, and then you're done, and you have ensured this new regulation has been implemented throughout the group, and you can, it's how an integrated process use case can look like. So thanks you.
Tom.
That was our use case. Back to you, Dirk.
Yeah, thanks, Khan, for those samples. And it's just about fundamentals. It's just about samples. I saw that we have 4 minutes left, which is, I guess, one of the first webinars where we have some time left to answer your questions, and we have some questions. So just first question was whether the recording of this webinar will be available or not. Yes, it will be provided later on. You will can get a link to get to the recording afterwards. Second question was whether or not this whole risk compliance management program can be tailored to other sectors. It was questioned whether it would fit to telecom regulatory compliance. I can say absolutely. So first of all, the components they still are the same whether you use it for financial service industries or whether you use it for non-financials. It's just the content that might be different, or obviously is different, but the way how to handle it, the way how to connect the dots will still be the same. So as we are not only supporting financial institutions, but also non-financial institutions. We already proved that, for example, in environment, health, and safety areas, where it was about a labor security, which has nothing to do with the typical AML risk cases. And then there was a question whether we can share templates or guidelines for client and business risk assessments. Yes, we do. So we have specific webinars for risk assessment, for our risk assessment platform. So the next one is on April 25th, the English one, as there's a German one 2 days before, but the English webinar is on April 25th, and we already had some, and you might want to see those recordings. And of course, you will always have the possibility to send us more information on info@msg-compliance.com. So that we can figure out what specific kind of support we can provide you. So feel free to send us an email here, but feel invited for our next risk assessment webinar where we share those best practices as well. Let me see whether or not we have other questions. Risk guidelines with regards to credit cards, cross-border transactions available. So the credit card schemes are for regulatory topics, but also for fraud topics. Sure. It's a standard way to handle those card-related risks. And then there was another question. The system program is excellent for the large size organizations. How do you foresee this being used by smaller organizations due to resource constraints? See, the resource constraints is also the one affecting the large organizations as well, even more than a small organization. So the idea on how to connect those dots is to save time and to save effort, being more effective, but also being much more efficient than the old way of doing the compliance business. That's, by the way, why our name is Rethink Compliance, because we thought about thinking the compliance topics a little bit different and trying to digitize it much more than you have seen this over the last 10 to 15 years. In regards to certification, so if you would like to get an attendance certificate, please use another email address. Just send an email with your requirement to rethink@msg-compliance.com. So general information, contact information, or request for guidelines and so on, please send to info@msg-compliance.com. Certifications to rethink@msg-compliance.com. But it's also shown in the chat. Yes, the recording will be available afterwards. So we are 1 minute after our time. Thank you all for staying with us that long. Thank you all for your questions and for participating in the polls. Would like to welcome you again in one of our next sessions. As mentioned, the next one for the risk assessment program is on April 25th. Thank you all. Have a nice day and have a good week.
Thank you. Bye-bye.